Hello everyone and welcome to Throwing in the Towel, the weekly series where I take a hard look at the NFL's losers and decide which team's season is officially cooked. I'll go division by division, crown an AFC rep, an NFC rep, and finally pick the one team to throw in the towel on this week. And we start, per usual, in the AFC East, which has a lone representative in the New York Jets. And the arrival of head coach Aaron Glenn was supposed to change the culture in New York. 4 games into his first season, the new New York Jets look a lot like the old ones. Some teams can overcome a miscue here and there, but no team is winning many games when it loses the turnover battle and cannot get out of its own way. Over in the North, we have every team but the Steelers, starting with the Browns. Their defense is really good. However, that doesn't mean much when the offense and special teams units are terrible. Joe Flacco, who was supposed to provide a steady presence at quarterback, has often been the one making mistakes. The decision not to roll with an unproven rookie to open the year was sensible, but it's time for the Browns to get a look at Dylan Gabriel, likely before getting a look at Shedeur Sanders. For the Bengals, if the last 2 weeks are an accurate indication, the Bengals have no hope of staying afloat until Joe Burrow can consider a return. In fact, if the last 2 weeks represent who these Bengals are, they might not avoid the AFC North basement. We knew that Cincinnati's defense wasn't likely to be good this season. However, it's as if the Bengals have forgotten how to do the fundamental things correctly, with Burrow out of the lineup. It all reflects negatively on head coach Zach Taylor, who can't use Burrow's injury as an excuse for poor preparation. And for the Ravens, they were expected to be one of the top challengers in the AFC this season. After only a month, it may be time to reassess realistic goals for Baltimore. Can the Ravens battle back and make the postseason? Maybe. But right now, their focus should be on doing the fundamental things right, getting players back healthy, and getting back in the win column. Over in the South, we have a lone representative in the Indianapolis Colts. No one really thought that Daniel Jones and the Colts were going to keep playing at an elite level, right? I'm not the only one here, right? While the shoe finally dropped during Week 4, Indianapolis' performance in a loss against the Rams was still promising, albeit disappointing. A.D. Mitchell certainly made a couple boneheaded plays that didn't help matters. In the AFC West, we have the Chargers and the Raiders. Starting with the Raiders, they brought in a new offensive coaching staff and acquired a 2-time Pro Bowl quarterback this offseason, but considering the fact that Geno Smith is leading the league in interceptions, they are still a work in progress on that side of the ball.
Corey Williams, the stumble, here they come. They spring him free, Williams a shot.
And for the Chargers, they can't just move on from this loss against the Giants and dismiss it as a fluke. They lost their left tackle Joe Alt to a high ankle sprain after losing Rashawn Slater to a torn patella tendon back in August. Los Angeles has to again reshuffle its offensive line following the injury to Joe Alt, which raises concerns about this team's short-term season outlook. If you can't protect the quarterback, what can you do? So that brings us over to our AFC divisional reps. We have the Jets in the East, the Browns in the North, the Colts in the South, and the Raiders in the West. So of these 4 teams, who will be representing the AFC this week? Well, it's going to be the New York Jets, a team that made one too many errors and gave Miami the ball way too many times for Miami to build a comfortable lead and then just be able to sit on that lead. Now we move over to the NFC side of things, and we start per usual in the NFC East, which has a lone representative in the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels may be expected back in the lineup for Week 5, but he can't cure what went wrong with the Commanders against the Falcons. Daniels' return will give the offense a boost, though Marcus Mariota, credit to him, he wasn't awful as a starter. Still, Daniels is an elite playmaker when Washington's offense is firing on all cylinders. If that is enough to offset a bad defense, then Washington can still be a top team. They can still be a contender, but it's going to be a difficult path to the postseason for them to undertake. Over in the North, we have a lone representative in the Vikings, and this team has a quarterback problem. It had one before J.J. McCarthy got hurt. Granted, McCarthy was a problem when he was healthy. He played 1 great quarter and 7 bad ones. And now they have Carson the Ginger Statue Wentz. Shout out to Bleacher Report for that nickname. Add in a Vikings ground game, that averaged 3.5 yards a carry. And these Vikings look less and less like the team that went 14-3 and almost won the top seed in the NFC. So quarterback issues, injury issues, especially along the O-line. This is a team that is struggling to win at this moment, and clearly didn't get the win past week.
It's a toss to Kenneth Gainwell with room off the left side and a nice drive.
Over in the South, we have a lone representative of the Buccaneers, and following a loss to the undefeated reigning champions, the Buccaneers have no reason to hang their heads. I know moral victories don't matter for much, but at the very least they should at least consider taking a moral victory here. Without Mike Evans and with Chris Godwin making his season debut, they turned what was a blowout into a competitive battle, which required Philadelphia to make a late fourth quarter stop to seal the win. Maybe they'll get him next time, but unfortunately this was not their day. Over in the West, we have the 49ers and the Cardinals. Starting with the Cardinals, this is a team that perennially feels like the NFL's what-if team, and things are no different after a 2-2 start. This team, the Cardinals, they are not title contenders. However, they could make a push into the playoffs if they can field the running game without James Conner, if Marvin Harrison can start performing like a legitimate number one wide receiver, and if Kyler Murray can be the sort of offensive leader that he has not been to this point in his career. And for the 49ers, it feels like this team is at a crossroads yet again. They're dealing with multiple injured starters. Nick Bosa's out for the year. That threatened to derail their season. Despite this, though, they have a 3-1 record. The 49ers have playmakers. They should get Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle back at some point, and Kyle Shanahan usually has a solid game plan. However, this team is not quite talented enough to play sloppy football and win consistently. On top of that, Brock Purdy had some turnovers, and he didn't really play all that well against the Jaguars, turning the ball over. So now we move on to the NFC Division representatives. We have the Commanders in the East, the Vikings in the North, the Bucs in the South, and the Cardinals in the West. Now this is a bit of an interesting lineup here for the NFC, but somebody's got to represent this week, and of these four teams, who did I pick to represent the NFC? It's the Arizona Cardinals, the perennial what-if team. So that is so now we move over to the recap section. Week 1, it was the Panthers who, after I threw in a towel on them, they proceed to blow out the Falcons, and then they go to New England and proceed to get blown out themselves. So what is this Panthers team? I think we could just say not good and just kind of go with that. The Saints, they were a bit competitive, still unfortunately looking for that first win, but credit to them. They have been competitive. I have to give the Saints credit for that. They have been a competitive team. They just have not been able to close out games and get a win. And it wasn't going to happen against Josh Allen and the Bills. And the Titans, well, I think Cam Ward summed it up well with his post-game comments. I mean, really, I didn't think it was possible to go backwards, but I guess the Titans figured out how to go backwards and put up 0 points against the Texans. So that is your recap here. As you'll recall, our throwing in the towel Super Bowl matchup for this week. In the AFC, we have the Jets, and in the NFC, we have the Cardinals, and it's Jets versus Cardinals. Of those two teams, who did I pick to throw in the towel? Well, it's probably pretty obvious who I picked. It's the New York Jets. This is a team that hired a new head coach, hired a new general manager, and brought in a new quarterback in Justin Fields. And unfortunately, it has translated to 0 wins. Some good performance, like they were a bit competitive later in that game against the Dolphins. But overall, this team is making too many mistakes to get ahead and stay ahead in games. So what happens with this Jets team? Most likely, I think, the way I look at it right now is that Justin Fields will not be the quarterback in year 2. He just hasn't really... It's not that he's playing terrible, but he's not playing well enough to where you think, okay, this is the franchise guy going forward. At least that's how it looks right now. And with that, that is this week's team. Week 4 is the New York Jets. That will do it for this week's edition of Throwing in the Towel, and I will see you all next week for week 5.